Before we continue, understand this podcast is for adults only and refers to relationships and activities between adults which are voluntary and consensual. If you or anyone you know is being abused, coerced, or violently aggressed against, please reach out for help to the appropriate authorities. To the Gorean Voice podcast. Each week I explore a topic from the Gorean novels which I personally find interesting, or an aspect of living a Gorean-inspired, or Gorean-adjacent lifestyle here on Earth. Tal, hello, and welcome. Gorean Voice, episode 26, on the matter of restraining one's property at night. On this happy Sunday morning, I'd like to briefly touch on the idea of having one's kajira tethered, fettered, chained, leashed, caged, or otherwise held physically captive at night. Please bear in mind the following additional disclaimer. From an SSC, that's safe, sane, and consensual, perspective, this topic can fall a little outside the window of acceptable. Also bear in mind that from a Gorean perspective, SSC is a secondary consideration, and the more salient aspect of leashing is in fact the inescapability. You are taking the safety of your slave girl into your hands here. Treat this responsibility with the gravity it deserves. Remember also that any bondage applied in such a scenario is somewhat symbolic. You're probably so much larger and stronger than your slave girl that she couldn't, quote, escape from you if you didn't want her to, regardless of chains or cages, etc. All the same, there is something delicious about keeping your property physically secured as such. In the Gorean novels, slave women are depicted in several instances as being chained or caged at night. In many cases, this is mentioned in a matter-of-fact sort of way, given the norms of Gorean societies. And while it's remarkable to the reader, within the context of gore, it's meant to be no more noticeable than hitting the lock button on one's key fob and listening for the car to beep in acknowledgement. It's often a mostly practical affair, though it can be laden with symbolism. As a means of symbolic reinforcement, any woman who is getting chained or bound by me is trained to thank me for doing so. While I don't remember if kajirae thanking their masters for locking them up occurs frequently in the books, I'm happy to call it a Gorean practice that I enjoy. I'd actually like to share a little more of the personal and recite a forum post I wrote on the Gorean Gathering Place FetLife group a few months ago. It was titled, On the Matter of Restraining One's Property at Night. Good morning, all. Do you like to keep your slave girl restrained at night? In the past, some 16 years ago when we were quite new to each other, I had the regular habit of leashing my girl at nighttime. It was a pretty simple setup. I hitched the handle of a simple leash about the O-ring of her collar and padlocked it to a secure ring on the side of my bed, with the keys safely out of her reach. Once we started cohabitating permanently, several months later, we took this a step further. In the mornings, I would handcuff her before I unlocked the leash, frog march her over to the shower, and leash her up to another hard point in the shower area before uncuffing her. It was a pleasant way to be, and my property got to experience genuine captivity from the moment she went to bed until she presented me with her thoroughly washed self. Frequently, I'd have her wash me as well. In the intervening years, though, this nighttime physical captivity became rarer and rarer, and though in our every living situation I installed the requisite hardware, I didn't make use of it more than occasionally. As one may imagine, the birth of children didn't make things easier in this regard, with the constant needing to get up at night, the concern for tripping or even strangulation hazards as we co-sleep with the little people. So what was a 100% of the time ritual that literally bound her to me became a once-in-a-while happening when the kids were at the in-laws. So now, in 2024, our journey has taken us over a few rough roads, and it has taken a toll on my number one slave girl. It came down to the point where neither I nor she could trust herself to stay out of trouble while I was sleeping. Maybe trouble means self-harm, or maybe it just means a night of sleeplessness induced by rumination, aided by a little glass rectangle. Details are private. But since early August, it's now December 1st, she hasn't slept off-leash once. She needs this. Yes, it's a little inconvenient. I'll be woken up for a bathroom break from time to time, especially if she is unwell. But she is managing better sleep. These days, rather than by her collar, I make use of a locked leg cuff, but it's no less secure. It's also a little easier to explain to the kids. As far as they're concerned, Mummy, unfortunately, sometimes walks in her sleep, so this helps her avoid this. So lads, whether you do it to reinforce the bond, as I used to, or as something of a mental health, sleep integrity life hack, as I do now, do you keep your woman locked up at night? I had let it get away from me for a spell, but as with every part of keeping a woman in collar, the more I lean into it, the more she leans into me. Lasses, is sleeping tethered or kennelled something in your past? And can you see it in your future? Take care, Pancratio. Well, that's the end of the post. Of course, I must reiterate that Gorean or not, MS or not, a woman who chooses your company is putting her life into your calloused hands. So bondage and pseudo-bondage, however naturalistic or even historically well attested, is somewhat redundant. That being said, there is a beautiful spark that is ignited when the bondage is genuinely physical and not simply underwritten by one's muscular physique. It creates a rock-solid clarity of intent and circumstances that is sorely needed by more than a few women in 2024. Their days may be filled with dozens of tasks, scores of concerns, and hundreds of distractions, and the distractions now come at light speed into the palm of her hand. So give her the gift of 8 hours free of freedom, when the only distractions are real, physical, embodied things. Give her the gift of 8 hours of phone-free time. Now, for ideas to flit in and out of her consciousness, they must be summoned, conjured, or generated between her ears, and not dumped into her eyeballs from a little glass rectangle. Better yet, speak some of the ideas of yours into her mind yourself, such that she may all the better become the woman she wants to be, which is, of course, the woman you want her to be. Give her the gift of pure attention for 8 hours. Remove all extraneous choices for the next 8 hours. Let her be present and live in the non-negotiable, unforgiving, embodied reality. Things can be inconvenient and occasionally painful, but they are real. When the lovely creature that you own happily crawls into her kennel for the night, or happily presents you with the O-ring of her collar to be tethered for the night, or happily holds the Gorean bracelets position while you gently apply handcuffs to her and leash her up for a walk. When this happens, and she willingly makes herself ever more helpless before you, she is expressing a love for her master so complete it transcends all other considerations. As it happens, my favorite low these past several months is having my Ichiban Dorei-chan, that's a Japanese way of saying my number one slave girl, present her calf and ankle, held in beautiful tension, level with the bed or floor, and toes pointed. Well, thanks for joining me again this morning. Lads, don't lose your keys, but don't lose your locks either. Lasses, surrender everything to your master. If your mind is obedient, and your body under lock and key, he'll be happy to fly your soul like a kite. In a future episode, I'll be examining some very specific questions about weaponry, Gorean and earthly, the extent to which a man of Gorean disposition needs also to have a martial attitude, and whether or not this extends to his kajira. However, pray join me again next week, where I'll get into mankind's highest art form, the art of the argument. I'm a man of many sports, hobbies, and interests, but argument is king among them. In the meantime, fair winds and happy trails.